Hey guys, this is Jocelyn from Fantasia Elegance. In light of Valentine's Day being just around the corner, I thought it'd be fun to do this week's tutorial on some different heart designs. So as you can see here, we have several different ones I'll be showing you how to do. These are all quite simple, kind of a charm style. They can be used either as, obviously, a charm on a bracelet, or as a pendant or earrings, pretty much whatever you want to do with them. So I'm going to be showing you how to make 3 different styles. Number 4 here is really just a variation of the second one, so that's kind of a bonus design that I'll be showing you how to do. So before we get started, please do take note that I, as always, have listed all the tools and materials that I use in the description section below. And a little note about these hearts. I'm going to be using 20 gauge wire for all of them, and also some 24 gauge wire for the wrapping there that you see. However, you can really use whatever size gauge of wire you want to. Obviously with these charms, any size is going to look good with them. It really just depends on what you're trying to do. If you want a pendant, you might want to bump it up to 18 gauge wire. If you're using them as bracelet charms, you might want to make them a little more petite. So do keep that in mind as we're going through this. But as always, I will of course show you the lengths of wire I'm using just so you can follow along if you wish to. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with the simplest design right here. And let's jump right in. So to make our first and simplest heart design out of 20 gauge wire, you're going to want to use 2.5 inches approximately. And again, I'm using 20 gauge round wire. I'm actually using silver filled wire from riogrande.com. So once you have your 2.5 inch piece, you're just going to bend this right in half, making sure the ends are meeting up evenly. Just like so. And then you're going to narrow down the bend down here and actually cross the 2 wires over each other. And what we're doing is making the bottom little loop, at the bottom of the heart. And I'm making this kind of in a teardrop shape. If you look at the shape that's being made in the center of the loop, you want it to be teardrop shaped, just like so. Once you have your loop there, you can really make it whatever size you want. I guess I like it fairly small, so it's about 1/8 of an inch wide and a little bit taller. You're going to start curling these 2 tails up and in to make the top of your heart. And of course you want these to be symmetrical. Let me go ahead and switch to my round nose pliers. Taking the very tip here, you're going to curl this very tightly, and you're going to make a spiral going in towards the center. Do the same thing with the other one. And now obviously we want these to be meeting each other in the center line. So I'm going to make any little adjustments I need to achieve that. So here we can see our little heart is taking shape nicely. And at this point you do want to do any last minute little tweaks that you need to in order to get the most pleasing shape possible. As long as you wind up with both of these 2 wires meeting each other right in the center line of the heart, you'll be good to go. So at this point, go ahead and pull out your 24 gauge wire. Assuming, of course, you're making the same scale heart that I am. And you're going to want about a 1 inch piece of this. Go ahead and bend that in half as well, with a very small space for the U shape right there. And what we're going to do with this piece is actually bind these 2 swirls together. So I'm just going to drop that U-shaped piece over both of the wires here, just like that. And then I'm going to cross the two tails and start wrapping this tightly around. So again, you're just wrapping both tails around to bind those two swirls together. And I like to make sure that each wrap is on nice and tightly before I proceed with the next one. So I snug it down with my chain nose pliers as I go. And once you have 3 or 4 wraps right there, go ahead and make sure that both tails are on the same side, which is going to be the back, and use your flush cutters to trim off any excess length you have. And just make sure there aren't any sharp little ends sticking up by squeezing it down with your chain nose pliers. Just like so. So as you can see, this is a very easy and quick, nice little heart charm design here. So that is style number 1. So for our next style, it's going to be very similar to this. It's really just the inverse. Instead of the little loop being at the bottom of the heart, it's going to be right at the center, just like so. So for this design that we're going to make next, you're going to want just about 3 inches of 20 gauge wire. And we're going to start this out exactly the same way, bending it in half, tightening this up a little bit, and then crossing the ends and making a nice little teardrop shape with that loop at the bottom. Except this time we're going to curve the tails down. And you want them to meet in a nice V shape at the bottom. So once both your tails are meeting in a nice little X or V shape at the bottom there, you're going to once again take your round nose pliers, and this time we're going to tightly curve the ends to the outside of the heart. And as before, you may need to make a few slight adjustments to make sure that everything is meeting together nicely. Alright, so once you have your 2 little swirls at the bottom done and meeting right in the center line of the heart, as before, go ahead and cut a approximately 1-inch piece of 24 gauge wire. And we're going to use this to bind together those 2 swirls. So once again, putting a U-shaped bend in this, and I'm going to drop it over both wires right here. If I can get it over both wires. There we go. Just like that. And, just like before, go ahead and cross those 2 wires over each other. and tighten them on up. Once you have 3 or 4 wraps there, making sure both of your ends are on the same side of the heart, which is going to wind up being your back side, go ahead and trim off any excess with your flush cutters. And just tighten down the ends with your chain nose pliers, just like so. So there we have already done 2 different styles. And one little note about this last one we just finished, there is a fun little variation you can do on this. Here's what it looks like. And for this, it's made exactly the same way, except you're going to not make the initial bend right in the middle. You're going to do it about, I want to say 2/3 of the way along the wire. And that's going to give you a longer side to do one of the swirls lower than the other one. So for this variation, I believe I used 3.5 inches of 20 gauge wire. So 3 for this one, 3.5 for this one. And again, you just make your initial bend slightly off center, and you wind up putting one of the swirls a little bit lower than the other. And this looks very cute if you hang it so that it kind of dangles just like so. A little bit asymmetrical. So there's a bonus design for you, a little variation of the one we just finished. So that moves us right along to our last little heart design, which is going to look just like this. And the difference with this one is that it's made using 2 pieces of wire. So let's go ahead and cut those lengths. You're going to want 2 pieces that are each approximately 1 3/4 inch long. You're going to make an S shape out of this wire. So using round nose pliers, at the very tip of the wire, start making a very tight swirl. And you're going to curve this all the way around, just like so. So you have a nice open spiral. And on the other end, you're going to do the same thing, going in the opposite direction. And this is going to be a slightly smaller spiral. And I'm going to make our top spiral a little bit larger here, as you can see. So we have a sort of modified S shape here. And go ahead and do the exact same thing with your second piece of wire. You do want these to match. If your loops are a little bit larger than you want them to be, you can use chain nose pliers to go ahead and tighten them on up a little bit. And you can simply lay your pieces over each other to make sure that they are the same. There we go. And of course, for our heart design, we're just going to reverse these and they get matched together just like so. So for this one, we're going to use 2 different pieces of wire to bind these together, one up at the top swirl and one down at the bottom swirl. So let's go ahead and cut those. Again, I'm using 24 gauge wire. And we're going to want 2 pieces that are each about 1 inch long. And as before, just making a nice U-shaped bend with these. And working with 1 piece at a time. I'm actually going to make that a little bit tighter there. What I'm going to do is hold both of these together so that they match up in the position I want. So I'm just using my left hand fingers here to go ahead and stabilize that. And then I'm going to drop this little U-shaped piece of wire right over both swirls and go ahead and cross those two tails over each other. And this design is a little bit trickier than the others just because you're trying to hold together two pieces that are not attached in any way at the start. So I'm going to wrap both of these tails around, binding together those two swirls. And again, in each step I like to really tighten everything down with my chain nose pliers, just making sure it's all nice and snug, lying as flat as possible against the larger gauge wires. Once you have 3 or 4 wraps completed, trim off any excess wire you have from the two tails. Tighten it down with your chain nose pliers. And we're almost done. We just have to do the exact same thing on the lower swirl using our second piece of 24 gauge U-shaped wire. So there we go. So just to recap, let me lay out the different styles we've made. As you can see, they're all slightly different, but very cute designs. And our little bonus one right here at the end. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to make these little heart charms. One note on using these to make finished pieces of jewelry. You have several different options. I went ahead and made some into earrings just so you could see. One way you can do is to simply, whoa, got bright, is to simply put your ear wire or jump ring or pendant bail through one side of the heart. This will let it hang slightly off center, which is a very kind of fun and whimsical style. If you want it to hang straight up and down, what you can do is actually use 3 jump rings. You can see I did one through each loop of the heart, and then a third one that's going through both of those jump rings so that it hangs nice and straight from the ear wire. So those are your different options in terms of hanging these. I have done a couple tutorials. One I've done on making French hook ear wires. If you're interested in seeing that, you can go ahead and click right here. I've also done a tutorial on a nice wire-wrapped bail that would work well to make these into a pendant. If you would like to see that video, you can go ahead and click right here. So again, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found it helpful. Thanks for watching. Please do take a few moments to check out my Etsy shop and Facebook page. The links are in the description section below. And go ahead and comment if you have any ideas for future wire-wrapped tutorials you might like to see. Thanks for watching, and happy crafting!